Welcome to There's a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs. I've been in business since 1994. Purpose of this podcast is to educate you on what really works and what doesn't work, and the method to the madness. In other words, like, why do things work? And again, really to educate you on the fact that when you know the science, it's not as complicated, it's not as gimmicky as you're led to believe by many people out there. So before I get to today's topic, which is some sports psychology stuff of the yips, and yes, the yips apply to all of us, I want to thank our sponsors, Jonathan and Lynn Gilden of the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. They currently have over 280 five-star reviews on Zillow. They are in the Ormond Beach area primarily. Ormond Lakes is one of Jonathan's specialties, but as he has told me, they go everywhere, which is pretty obvious because when you check out their social media accounts, they are constantly selling houses. And as I always say, good begets good. So if you're good at what you do, you obviously know what you are doing. If you need help with your real estate needs, give them a call or check them out on the internet at thegildengroup.com. And if you want to call them, let me know. I will get you their phone number, gildengroup.com. All right, so the yips. What are the yips? Yips happen, as far as the real formal meaning of the term, mostly in baseball and mostly in golf. And basically what it is when the athlete fails to be able to do a remote task that they always could do, a very simple task. For example, in baseball, one catcher that is famous for having the yips, and thankfully he has recovered and he's okay. And that's the point of this podcast, is to help you to know what you can do if you experience any of these things and you're thinking, I don't play baseball, I don't play golf, But yes, you do. You are going to be able to relate to these things once you understand what they are. But the catcher literally could not throw the ball back to the pitcher. It got to the point where, and I'm sure you understand baseball, right? The pitcher throws the ball over the plate, or hopefully over the plate, to try to make a strike. The catcher catches the ball, and then that's the hard part, right? And then the easy part supposedly is just the catcher to return the ball back to the pitcher. And it is such a mundane, easy task. But the yips, when they get the yips in this case, they can't literally throw the ball back to the pitcher. They will just sail it on him, which means goes over his head, or they throw it at his feet. It just doesn't get back there, and it is completely a psychological issue. Clearly this catcher, by the way, and this has happened more often than you might imagine at the major league level. So clearly this is not a person who doesn't know how to throw a baseball. This is completely a psychological dilemma, but they cannot get it back to the pitcher. So the catcher basically has to get set down until they figure out what's going on. It happened famously to a second baseman that played for the New York Yankees during the late 90s. When was it? 1998, yes. 97, 98, Chuck Knobloch, and he was a phenomenal second baseman. I mean, guy was an all-star. He was a World Series hero by hitting home runs. This is no slacker. Around that time, or I think it might have been slightly after the Yankees dynasty there, he couldn't throw the ball to first base. And if you know anything about the second base position, it is right next to first base. So it is typically the position in baseball where the person in the infield doesn't have the strongest arm. And when we say strongest, I mean still a major league second baseman will literally knock you and I down if we're playing catch. So we have to keep this all, relative here. But compared to a shortstop and a third baseman, they don't have quite the arms because the distance they throw the ball isn't as far, and that's why this is relevant. They get to the point when they have the yips where they literally can't make that throw. They'll throw it over the head, they'll throw it to the side. They literally can't play catch with that. Now in golf, it's very similar. The person gets to the point where they really just can't tee off anymore. They can't hit the ball anymore. A ball that isn't moving. And don't get me wrong, I understand golf is a very difficult game, and I'm not good at it whatsoever. And I struggle with hitting the ball off the tee to drive the ball. But you have to keep in mind, I'm a hack and I'm a terrible golfer. And the reason I can't hit the ball isn't because of the yips, it's because I stink. Now, in their cases, they're professionals, and they get to the point where they just freeze. That's what the yips is. You just freeze. You get basically into a catatonic state to an extent, and you can't do the mundane tasks that you used to be able to do. So notice I brought this up with baseball and golf. So what do those two things have in common? What they have in common is the fact that it's not exactly happening in the flow of the game. It's happening more when they have time to think. So the catcher gets the ball, and again, if you don't know baseball, just understand this. When the catcher is throwing the ball back to the pitcher, it's mostly a dead ball. I mean, not completely, because if he throws it and misses the pitcher and there's a guy on base, the person on base can steal. And in that case, it wouldn't even really be a steal. But I think you get my point. So it's not like it's necessarily during live action. I mean, they can steal at any point. And if there is nobody on base, it's definitely a dead ball, meaning that there's no part of the game going on. But you can imagine if you're a professional catcher, there's nobody on base, and you can't throw the ball back to the pitcher, and maybe you're playing in Yankee Stadium, so you have 50,000 fans watching you. I can imagine that'd be a little embarrassing, that you literally can no longer play catch like you used to be able to do, and you could do high-level things which less than 1% of the population could ever imagine doing. So it's a task that's mundane typically. It's a task where you're frozen in thought, meaning that you have too much time to think about the activity. It's not like you are playing in the outfield and a ball is rocketed out towards you and you're sprinting as fast as you can, reacting to a moving target, and now you dive perhaps, or you just make a catch, but your O is in action, and then before you can think about it, you throw the ball back out or back into the infield. No. Or in football, the quarterback gets snapped the ball and they're running around in the pocket and they have less than 2 seconds to throw the ball out. They don't necessarily have time to get the yips. Now, it's not like they can't get their own psychological problems going on, but it's not necessarily the same thing as the yips where a person has too much time to think. So that is what the yips are. Where do you do it? You're thinking, well, I don't play baseball, I don't play golf. Yeah, but when we exercise, when we play sports, and I guarantee you that just about every one of you out there has played sports or plays sports to a certain extent. It's the psychological component that really separates the great from the great. In other words, it's when you make it to Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, hockey, whatever, professional tennis tour, professional pickleball, whatever, professional golf. They're all the same pretty much elite-wise. They're elite talents. I mean, it's very hard to distinguish the difference physically from any of these athletes. I mean, it's just incredible if you've ever watched a combine or if you've ever really gotten up and close to watching professional athletes play. And I don't mean watching them on TV in their game. It is so hard to get an idea because they're playing against elite, so it doesn't look that impressive. But now all of a sudden, this professional baseball player comes out and plays in a men's softball league during the summer, and you might laugh and say, oh, when would that happen? Well, I actually had that happen once, and one of them happened to be on my team, and he played out in center field for a bit because we needed somebody to fill in, and it's not like we did anything dirty or anything. The league absolutely knew, and this happens every once in a while. But anyway, he whips the ball in so hard that it broke my second baseman's finger. I'm laughing. It's not really funny, and I don't mean to laugh at that, but it's like He had no freaking idea. He's just doing what he naturally does. He gets the ball near the fence, and he just throws a laser into second base to try to hold a runner, so to say. Which in this league, the runner wasn't even thinking about going anyway. It's like, they probably were barely at first base by the time he whipped it in. I mean, we're talking about, it's co-ed softball league. But, God bless the second baseman who, tried to take the throw. I was like, move, get out of the way, And he felt so bad. I mean, he was like just, oh, God, reaction, But literally, no exaggeration, broke the finger. So, we don't, and this guy, he was a good player, but it's not like he lasted in the major leagues very long, and I'm not knocking him at all. Less than 1% ever get up there. And he actually hit a home run in the major leagues, which is pretty cool. But this is a guy that really didn't stay on very long in the major leagues. So, the talent is just different. That's all I can say. It is a different level of physicality. I mean, it is just a different level of physicality. So I think I made that point. So when we get there, the difference is going to be psychological between the athletes. And that's why nowadays in the NFL combines and the NBA drafts and the Major League Baseball drafts, there are so many psychological battery tests to see how the person is going to respond under pressure. Because if they can't respond under pressure, I don't care how good they are, they're not going to be too good to anybody. Now, the yips are correctable. They're correctable. It's an anxiety disorder. It's a catatonic anxiety disorder. That's exactly what it is. It's stage fright. It's feeling like the whole world's going to fall apart if you make a mistake. That's exactly what it is. But it is absolutely a psychological manifestation that is going on. So if you think about the psychological thing and you're watching your favorite sports teams play, I mean, if you followed the New York Yankees, and I was a huge Yankees fan, I've been discouraged with them and following more of the Rays now. That's neither here nor there. But in the 90s, I mean, I didn't grow up in New York. I was born in New York. I watched a lot of Yankee Met baseball. But I mean, they were the team. I loved that team. They had so many personalities, so many players. They were great. But if you followed them, you know that a little bit after the late 90s dynasty, they got Alex Rodriguez. Well, during the 90s dynasty, they had Derek Jeter. Now, if you look at the overall numbers, now, Derek Jeter is a Hall of Famer. There's no question about that. And he left the Yankees as the all-time hit leader, over 3,000 hits, and all these great accolades. There's no doubt about that. But if you look at their individual statistics in their career, I mean, Alex Rodriguez is one of the greatest of all time. I mean, he almost hit. He was on the cusp of 600 home runs, right? Might even be 700. I don't know. But I remember looking that up the other day. But it was one of the huge benchmarks. I mean, the guy could do it all. I mean, just a phenomenal talent. But if you ask any Yankee fan, now granted Jeter played there longer, and Alex didn't exactly have the greatest personality when he played, and there's all these things involved. But if you ask them who, the GOAT is, as far as they're concerned, it's going to be Jeter because of how he played in the clutch, how great he was in the clutch. What kind of mental toughness he had in all of these variables. I mean, you talk about not fearing the limelight. We're talking about playing in New York City in the late 90s when the whole world was watching. I mean, the team went to four World Series in 5 years. I mean, it was an incredible run that they had. I mean, Jeter won 5 World Series titles. Alex Rodriguez only one. So when we look at why, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but I look at the statistics and I'm like, wow, look at what he did in the postseason. Look what he did in the World Series compared to what Alex Rodriguez did. Alex Rodriguez finally had a good series in 2009 and they won the World Series, but previous to that, he was thought of as a choke artist by New York fans, which can be ruthless. There's no question about it. But Jeter was nicknamed Mr. November because of a home run he hit to win a game on the first day of November. I don't remember what year it was, but to win a walk-off home run. The guy's clutch statistics are amazing. How many home runs he hit in the playoffs and World Series, and just the phenomenal plays that you saw. So the psychological profile is huge. It's just huge. I mean, you just can't separate what general managers and owners of teams want. Sure, they want talent, but they want the head as much as the body, if not more, because the body's going to be there or they would have never gotten drafted. They need those guys that are psychologically trained, and that's the whole point of this podcast, is we can train ourselves to be better. I mean, even in the gym here, when we're training people to get stronger in better cardiovascular conditioning, I see a form of the yips. And what that means is people that are tight, they care too much about each individual performance. The crazy part is you can't care that much about it. That is the problem. You're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You know, these professional athletes have to be able to care. And it's like, yes and no. And recently I heard a podcast and they were talking about these very same things, and they're talking about the psychological profiles. And what they do with these athletes is they say to them, they get them to go back and say, okay, so you're 16 years old and you're playing, you know, sorry if you're not a baseball fan, but there's just the best examples of the yips in baseball. And you're 16 years old, you're playing for your high school baseball team, and you get told by Mr. Future, says, hey, you're going to make it to the major leagues, and you're actually going to get a base hit in the major leagues. But that's all that's going to happen. Do you take that dream? And every 16-year-old's going to say yes. I mean, that's the show, man. You made it up. You got there. You don't care when you're 16 if you stay. You don't care like, oh, now I'm going to play for my next, 10-year contract, multi-billion dollars. No, you're like, yeah, man, I can say that I wore a jersey of a professional baseball team and I got a base hit. I mattered. I'm in the scorebook. Yes, I take that. Say, all right, so when they get people that have the yips to say, you're playing with house money. So you got to relax. You made the dream. Now it's like you got here. You're there. So relax. Like if it all ends tomorrow, your career in baseball is over, you can still say you met that dream of a 16-year-old kid, and there you go. So you can't make this more serious than it is. So when I see people that really underperform physically, and I know it's psychological, and I know I train different endurance athletes as well, and that's a continuous sport. So it's not like it's a sport that is stationary at all, like baseball and golf. I mean, you're moving the whole time. But runners, triathletes, cyclists, swimmers, crew, whatever, can freeze. Absolutely. Just start thinking it's too important. And as soon as you start thinking it's too important, you're toast. You're done. You have to play loose at whatever you do. As soon as you and I'm picturing right in my head right now how a certain person looks at a starting line of a race, and I'm always like, man, they are taking this too serious. They are not relaxed. They are going to freeze. This is going to come back. I mean, our body only has so much energy to use, period. I mean, we only have so much energy that we can rely upon, and we have to turn that energy on and be freely movable for all the things that we want to do. So if we are even going into a hard strength training session and we start thinking to ourselves, oh man, I really want to get 200 pounds on the bench press for 8 reps, whatever, as an example. And I can give you a very concrete one here in a second. And I want this, and so all of a sudden, the yips start to come out. Now the yips are in part like performance anxiety, so the person they absolutely know everybody is watching them. That's the thing with the yips. Like this guy that I heard talk the other day, he was a catcher in Major League Baseball. He'd say, I go home and I throw against my barn door literally the same distance that the pitcher is, and I hit the bullseye every time. So there's definitely a component of everybody's watching, and guess what? Yes, they are. Everybody is watching. But to conquer the yips, you have to say, I don't give a shit what they think. Like, this doesn't matter. I'm playing with house money. I'm having fun. I'm making money playing a boys' sport. This is awesome. I know it's easier said than done, But a good therapist, a good sports psychologist is going to help the person get back there and just like literally just let it rip, get in the flow and let it rip. But back to the gym example. So if you're constantly thinking, man, I want to do this, and then 4 reps in, you're already telling yourself it feels heavy. I mean, the body just has a way of letting that brain mess with it. So if it matters so much to you, you're going to get tight. And when you start to get tight, you get into a self-protective mode. That's just what we do. It's our body likes to protect us. So now we don't have the energy. And now when we start to push, it feels heavy. And now it feels heavy, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We start saying, see, I knew I didn't have it today. And instead of getting at 8 reps, you could get as low as 2 and rack it and call it a day. Now, about 2 weeks ago, worked with this young guy. It's so cool to see his transformation. He started coming to the gym. God bless his dad who's paid for him. He not to lose weight or any of those things that I think is well overblown, but to simply give him confidence and build his self-esteem and give him something encouraging to work for him. When he bumped in here at 14, there was a lot of immaturity. There was a lot of like not really wanting to be there. But now he's getting ready to turn 21, and like this kid like has transformed himself so much in his maturity levels and really wanting to be stronger. So he's been wanting to bench press 200 pounds for since last Christmas. So we're in September now. So that's 10 months away, right? 9.5 months away. And he didn't get it. And it just stuck in him. And so, I did the right thing because I got a psych degree. I love sports psychology. So I backed that off a little bit. I just kind of didn't bring it up, and I knew that's what he wanted. And I noticed over the last 3 months or so, he's really been getting stronger again. I wouldn't really tell him the weights. I just knew he was getting stronger. So 2 weeks ago, he comes in and I was ramping him up on the weights a little bit. And I told him we're going to do a weight that he's done before. And I told him it's an easy weight, and he's just going to do it one time. And he says, oh, okay. I said, now, so keep in mind, it might feel a little heavy, but you've done this before. He's like, oh, okay, whatever. He really wasn't paying attention because he didn't care. He's just got a good attitude. Whatever I tell him to do, he just does. And trust me, and he knows I'm back there to this bottom. So lo and behold, it was 200 pounds. He had no idea. I told him it was like 180. And he gets under it, unracks it, brings it to his chest. He pushed it up easy. And he racks it, and I was laughing. He's like, what? I said, dude, you just benched 200 pounds. And he had no idea this is what he was going to do. But see the power of the brain. And I could tell you right now that when we were working at this last Christmas time, because he really wanted to do it before New Year's, he was obsessed with hitting this number. He really wanted to hit the number. He was trying. He wasn't close. I think we hit 175, and then I'm like, all right, this is just going to break him. So I'm not going to keep bringing this up, But again, I started slowly watching him get stronger. I put on some weight. I'm like, hey, you just did 185. And so on and so on. I've been leading him up to it. And then he did it. And he was blown away. I sent a text to his dad, say, hey, you tell you hit 200. He's like, yeah, so proud of him and all this, And for those that don't know, getting stronger for a young man is very, very important for that confidence level, because you can see it. You can see the numbers going up, and you could say, I did that. I used to not be able to do that, and I did it. Well, how'd you do it? I did it with hard work. I did it with continuing to try. It is such a confidence builder. And I think that's true at every age. It's just we change the exercises sometimes, and we change the rep ranges. We can do the same thing with 10 reps. But as I've said before, getting stronger is so powerful for body, mind, everything is just so important. So I was so proud of him, but it's an example of how we free the brain up. And if we get too tight, if we get the yips, so what do you need to do? You need to not care so much. You just need to let it rip, all right? So I'll give you one last example on this of what you can do, what works. I did this triathlon up in New York, it's probably close to 15, 20 years ago. And I was on vacation. I was back to where area I was born in, so it was really just a vacation. Brought my bike, I had planned to do the race, but really a vacation. And I usually get there and I'm all tight and usually set up my bike, and when I was doing these things real competitively and just super nervous and super, I cared way too much. And this trip I wasn't. I was relaxed. I think literally the night before I ate a giant pizza. As a matter of fact, I know I did. Why would I lie and say I know I did. I only remember because I remember thinking to myself, my stomach's going to pay me back on this, but it didn't. So in any event, I really could care less. I was almost late to the starting line. I was still like unpacking my bike and putting it on the transition area as they're like, hey, you got to line up. I'm like, oh shit. So I throw the goggles on, had no idea the course, I knew I had the distance, that was it, and hit the swim, come out of the swim, I was in really good position, further than I usually was. Not going to talk about the exact numbers because it's irrelevant. Let's just say I did a lot better than I normally did and did well. Got on the bike, had a great bike, got on the run, had a good run, and had one of my best races ever. Competitively wise, placing wise, feeling wise, and I'm like, man, there is really something to dialing back how bad we care. And I work with a lot of people now that play sports. I work with a lot of tennis players. I work with pickleball players. I work with softball players, And I notice when they start to like put their self-esteem into it, when they're like, if I stink at this, I stink, that's a danger, If I strike out in softball, I suck. If I don't score 100 in golf, I'm just a loser. You think, who does that? Well, more people than you think, and it might even be you. Like, for some reason, when we start to identify with what we're doing in sports and fitness or anything, like, even your career, whatever, but if you start to identify with it, that's when you get in trouble because now you care too much. You've got too much on the line. What you have to do when you play these sports and work out is say, this is part of me. This is something I do, and I always want to be my best, but it's really not that big of a deal. Playing with house money, the fact that I can even do some of this, right? That's how we do have to look at it. So hope you gain something out of this. If anything, just know how powerful your brain is and treat it right. Train it. The brain is very trainable. Let me now thank Zach and Jeff Hawk, the owners of Overhead Door of Daytona Beach. And Overhead Door has been around for 100 years. Jeff, not quite 100 years. He's maybe pushing 58. So he's not there yet, but he has owned it for like 30 years, and they do a phenomenal job of customer service. So if you need any help with your garage door, check them out at overheaddordaytona.com.